You are listening to Wait a Minute with Beth and Jessica.
Episode 79. I'm Jessica Pearson, certified life coach.
And I'm Beth Barnett-Babel, integrative nutrition therapist. All right, Jessica, so I have a question for you. How does the saying, you can't change what you don't measure, feel to you?
When I read that sentence, I immediately got a little angry.
Okay.
If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Because my ADHD brain is like, oh, brother. But it's not necessarily untrue. So I can't wait to unpack that because, when I think about running a business, for example, tracking has been proven to be helpful when we do it.
Great.
Because it allows you to focus on the data and the facts and not the drama of, what's usually going on in our head and our heart.
Uh-huh.
But that said, I have definitely, and I've seen it in myself and clients, people are making change in body and mind without tracking or measuring. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I do love that saying that we have. It's one of our many ones, the data, not drama. And so I can wrap my head around that. And I do think it's a very touchy subject. And we say data, but tracking, and by tracking, because this is a nutrition and health podcast, we're talking about tracking your food and tracking that sort of thing. And I do think it's a touchy subject. And I will say that I admittedly tiptoe around it with certain clients or with a lot of clients, because that's just not the kind of dietitian that I have been. It is definitely a part of our training, of course. I will, if you ask me to, calculate your calories and your macros, but I don't force anybody to stick to them as if you don't do your calorie tracking or your macros counting, then you're not going to lose weight. You're not going to get your goals. And if somebody is off on, what they're doing, I'm I don't be well, did you count your calories? I don't do that. But I do find that it can be helpful. How long might it help? I don't know. And the other question is does it just make you obsessed with food Monday through Thursday, and then you breathe a sigh of relief on the weekends, Friday through Sunday, and then you don't track, and then it all goes off the rails? And so those are all of the things that kind of come up for me.
Yeah, I think that it can go either way depending on somebody's relationship with food and their capacity to track. Mm-hmm. And like you just said, it can perpetuate that kind of off on good, bad cycle if the mindset portion of it is not there. So it is everybody is different. And I know that sometimes people will argue it is the only way that I can see success. I don't like having agendas for people or telling them what they can and can't do. But sometimes when people become obsessed with tracking, I have to point that out and say, what if we took a break from it? And if they're not able to take a break from it, then I feel like that is a place to dive further.
Right. I have to say I agree. And I think one of the things that happens when I think about the science of our calories and how our body uses them and things like that, it's because for some people having a surplus of, say, a couple hundred calories a day is that difference because of their difference in either their genetic makeup or their gut microbiome and that sort of thing of how does their body respond to, a little surplus of a couple hundred calories. That is the difference for them. And I don't love that for them. It's not something I can always control, but I don't want them to be living in that obsessive mode.
Well, and to your point too, it becomes, what is that specific goal?
Right.
I recently saw on Instagram, there was this influencer and they were talking about, I'm just so sick of hearing about relationships with food. If you want to have a better relationship with food, just stop having a relationship with it. In her mind, thinking about it, highlighting it was only exacerbating it and making it worse. It was creating obsession for this person. And they were saying the only way to get away from the obsession is just to stop the caring or thinking about it really at all. And I didn't necessarily agree completely with that, but I did think that's kind of where we want people to end up, right?
Right.
When you're learning something, you do have to think about it. But the main goal is not for you to be tracking for the rest of your life.
Right.
Like, I would hope that we would learn, what does that 200 calorie difference look like? How can I find the rhythm with that and just know how to nourish myself so that I don't have to think about it? I think that's usually the goal, because that seems more sustainable and more healthy for most people, but not everybody. So I don't know. For example, I had a client come to me and she was saying like, oh, I was on vacation and none of what I've learned was top of mind. So therefore I must have failed. Right? But then when I was asking her questions and we started talking about vacation and unpacking what she actually did, kind of the data, even though she wasn't tracking.
Right.
She was like, well, I actually did make an effort to have a vegetable every day, which on prior trips, I definitely would not have thought about that or done it. Mm-hmm. And she noticed there were a couple instances where she stopped eating when she was full. Like, she didn't eat the extra 3 things that were on the plate. And so I was like, hello, you're doing it. And it's okay that it's not top of mind. It's like, now it's subconscious and you're just doing it. And that's, to me, that's the goal.
Which came to that question of, can you track and still be an intuitive eater, or can you not track and still be an intuitive eater? And I think you can. I think you can have both, because I ask people if they have really no clue what their food intake looks like in a data way, is to do it for a week. Just so you have an idea of like what you take in and do we need to make adjustments to balance out nutrients. And so I have people do it for a week. And then if they want to continue, is like, we want people to like find rhythms where they're like, this is what works for me. And so then they can find that thing of like, here's what I eat for breakfast most days of the week, or this is what I eat for lunch. And so then they just kind of are able to develop that thing that works for them. So then it can become mindless.
Yeah. And it's also like, are you just tracking what you're eating? So you could eat intuitively and track that.
Yeah.
Or are you eating to track? You know what I mean? Because I know that when you do track, there is some mindfulness and like it does tend to affect what people are doing a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But it's different than just tracking what you would do with honesty versus tracking like this idea of perfection or what you're supposed to be eating.
Right. Yeah. I tell people, again, data, not drama, don't change what you eat, which is easier said than done. Yeah. Every time I'm like, you're going to attempt to want to not put it in your mouth or put it on the app or paper or however we're choosing to get the information. I was like, you're going to want to do it, but I want you to do it as close as possible, because we're not here to judge. We just need some information. Just like if this were a lab test, this is what we need to find out.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part for people, is to be honest with themselves about what they're doing. Either they're feeling shame or judging themselves, or they're worried that we're going to shame them or judge them, which we absolutely do not do. But to me, the relationship is not with the food, it is with self.
Right, exactly. So, the reason why I think about this topic is because I do look at research sometimes. And so the research is out there that people are more successful when there is some level of tracking. And it is one of the things that comes out of the weight loss registry, which is, people that have lost weight and kept it off for a significant amount of time. One of the themes that comes up is people that track their food, and it's even over a course of a long time and they've kind of gotten into a rhythm, they still continue to have that check-in with them. And so, but there is a point where even if you log your food a couple times a week, you're still gonna gain benefit from it. So there is in the research showing that people can have a healthy relationship with food and not become too obsessive with it and with the tracking or the logging, and then be able to still have those goals if you want them, right? The research does show that it is helpful, but not if it makes you miserable. So if it becomes a part of a misery and this hyperfixation, then it's not helpful, because those things you always get derailed with that what that happens. Like it's very much like an on-off situation. And so that's the caveat.
Yeah. I love the idea of once or twice a week, or just finding whatever rhythm and pattern works best for you. And it's such an important reminder that progress does not have to come from perfection. Because I think when we all think about tracking, or the way that we were taught to track is like MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
Which is like so specific. And, you know, if you miss a day, they're like, hello, where are you?
Right.
So yeah, no, it's like you can find a way to do it that hopefully can, you know, not feel obsessive or hyper fixation like to you.
Yeah, I think it's helpful, right? Like, I mean, I do it from time to time. I did it about 3 weeks ago for about a week just to see. I was just curious because I asked people to do it. And so sometimes when a client is doing it, I'm like, well, let me see how it is. Because I don't want to tell people to do things that I'm not willing to do. And so every once in a while, I'll just kind of bop in on, I use Chronometer. I find it way easier to use than MyFitnessPal for a wide variety of reasons. And so with Chronometer, it's not that hard. I do it, and then I can just rinse and repeat on, you know, when I eat leftovers and things like that. And so I'm just curious. It did not change anything about how I was eating. I wanted to know, like, am I getting enough food? Am I getting too much, like, for my body? I wasn't sure. I just wanted to know. So I think it'd be helpful. But nothing changed.
Yeah, and that is such a good point about not enough food, because that often is a real reality for a lot of people who have been taught, like, you got to live off 1,100 calories, or like they're just in their mind, maybe they're not even tracking or counting, but they are under eating. And then they're wondering, like, what's wrong with me? Why aren't things working? And it's like, yeah, at some point, you know, if you're not giving your body what it needs to flourish, then that's going to work against you too. So
right.
I don't know. And then also just the fact that there's other inputs and outputs. It's not just food in, food out. It's like, well, how is your sleep? What is your muscle mass? How are your hormones? Like, there's so many other factors that can roll into these calculations. And that's why when people get really hyper fixated on, here's all of my data, like, what is wrong? I'm like, well, maybe it's not the food.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because people are like, well, what am I supposed to be looking for? And I'm like, well, if your protein is about here and your fiber is about here, like, we're doing pretty good. And then let's start there. And then depending on how you feel otherwise, then we can make some tweaks. And so that's what I always tell people to focus on. I'm like, unless you're severely under or over nourishing yourself, I don't look at calories at all. I'm just like, are you getting protein?
Yeah.
And are you getting fiber? Because when you get adequate amounts of that, typically that helps to create that satiation, and you're typically getting a wide variety of nutrients that your body needs for that.
Yeah. And again, I think it comes back to, what exactly are you trying to control and why? Mm-hmm. You know, is it just weight loss, or like what are we going for, right? We have to be honest with ourselves, because I think for a really long time, probably until my 30s, I was like, my goal is a 6-pack. But like, what?
I wanted one of those too one day, or for a very long period of time. But it's not capable.
For like most of my teens and 20s, I was like, 6-pack is the way. But now I'm like, I don't want a 6-pack. Like, I'm not willing to do that. It's not the work that I want to do. So what are my goals? Well, my goals are like being able to have vitality and being able to move my body without injury, and my mental health and just general health, and making so many other reasons. And I think it's important to really think about that, because we've just been taught, like, weight loss is the only goal and the only reason to track our food.
Right. Yeah, and I think you can absolutely do it for metabolic reasons, to look at their labs. Like, okay, you didn't like this number on your labs because it's correlated to a specific disease state that could become a real problem for you. And you stated you don't want that disease state. All right, so let's look at what you're intaking that is influencing that. And so then that's where it's like, okay, well, the numbers should be around here, so we're not influencing that disease state. And so I will use it for that as well with clients. And I think that that's really important too, because it's not about weight loss. And then inevitably they're like, well, but will it help me lose weight? And I'm like, but but we were talking about diseases. I was like, actually, I don't know. Yeah, I do. I tell them that. I'm like, maybe. It's like telling my kids, like, can we go to so-and-so? And I'm like, maybe. It may not happen. I'm not any promises.
Well, at the end of the day, we cannot guarantee outcomes. So I actually follow this guy on Instagram. He's a money guy, and he is very obsessed with tracking his finances. But then he got very hyperfixated. Not hyperfixated. He's just doing it. He's tracking his like calories every day, and he'll post like, hey, here's my 2 weeks. And what I find fascinating is because he'll say like, he'll track his weight, and he'll share his weight week to week based off they're on like the exact same calorie intake every day, which I think is so interesting, because I'm like, there's days where you're hungrier and days when you're not so hungry. And so sometimes I'm like, are we robots? Like, where it's just, here's your food every day. But what I love is that when he shares his weight, it's not like a direct like 2 pound loss every single week, right? Like there are ebbs and flows in the outcomes of the input that is the same. And I just thought that was like a really clear picture of, we don't actually have very specific control over the exact outcome week to week, even when you are really dialed in on your, like, if you are tracking and you're someone that's willing to do that without drama, it's still not an exact science.
Right. It's not an exact science. And I think that we've been led to believe for a long time, and we've talked about it on this about calories as well, that it's not an exact science. Like there is so much variation from person to person and meal type to meal type. So, the more cooked your food is, the easier it is to process, and the less work your body has to do to utilize, to get those calories. And so you actually use less calories in digestion. And so even the type of meal determines like how much you're going to get out of that meal. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Okay, so what if you hate tracking?
Don't do it. If you hate tracking, don't do it. And then also don't be upset about you think. Like you can't be hyper focused on this very specific thing if you won't do it, right? But if you really need to make a change because if there's a disease state, then we have to find the roadblock that's keeping you from doing that. So there's a part of you that has that roadblock, probably from a history of constant down your throat about tracking things.
Yeah, or it's like find the loose tracking system.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because to your point, if you are not tracking, but you are in the drama department, then the living in the drama state is not going to serve you.
Correct.
Right? That's going to feel bad. And so you have to find a way to lean into the facts. But it doesn't mean that has to be all just the calorie facts or just the macro facts. Like, let's pick some facts that feel okay to you and like the frequency that's going to work for you and the capacity that you have.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to look at it. I have some people just write it down in their notes app. We're just trying to get a general idea because I can eyeball some stuff to see what you're doing.
Well, I love a photo journal, right? Just take a picture of it.
Yeah. I've tried that. And me personally, I haven't been as successful with it. I don't know why.
Sometimes I can get enough data to give them feedback that way, if that's the route that works for them.
Right. Yeah, I find that can be helpful. Some people like lose track of all their pictures in their phones because, they take so many pictures. And then I always forget to take a picture knowing that I could do that versus plugging it away in the phone. I have no idea. It's a funny little quirk.
Well, also, when will we get the AI or the technology where you can just take a photo and it will just upload it properly for you?
Right. I mean, I could see the benefit of the AI for that, I suppose, but it's still creepy.
Have you seen those ads on Instagram or wherever? Maybe I'm seeing them on TikTok where it's like a scale and you just put food on the scale and it tells you how many calories are in it.
How would it know that? Like, how does it know the composition of the other things?
I don't know. They do. All the videos are the people like, look, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this. And they put different things on the scale and it's like beep, boop, boop, boop. And it shows you. But yeah, who knows?
But helpful, and also what it does inside your body. Mystery.
Yeah. No.
So,
yeah.
Still not exact science. But I guess it's like it speeds up the process.
No. I mean that, or is that going to drive a hyperfixation? Or, I feel like that tool could definitely be not ideal for some people.
Right. It's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to drag that thing with you to the restaurant and put it on there? And can you really guess
Never
how much oil
people?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, okay. Well, it's up to you to decide how tracking fits in to your daily life or not. Like how much of it is helpful for your health goal that you may or may not have. And then making sure that you know that there is room that for once you consume the thing, it changes for each person, as we talked about. Like calories are not calories for each person. It depends on so many factors. And then can you do it without drama?
Sounds good. No drama.
No drama. Take us out.
I sure hope we gave you something new to think about today and helped you take one more step on your path to freeing yourself from diet culture. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram at path_nutrition. If you need more support on your nutrition journey, please visit us at pathnutrition.com.
Bye, everyone.